Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Ben 10. So, this, of course, is to be Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3. So, this is really just the introduction of this character. And so, I thought I would go on and I would talk about how I was introduced to this character. So, of course, I would see a bunch of, Cartoon Network shows. And so, I would just see a lot of just random things. And so eventually, when I went into seeing Ben 10, I was like, okay, what is this show about? And so, come to find out, this show eventually reminded me of Dial H for Hero, which is of course a comic book, and would also have me realize oh wait, so this character can go on and kind of be like Power Rangers in a way, because it morphs into this kind of more powerful being. It can be kind of like Bruce Banner and the Hulk, or it could go on and just kind of be another kind of transformation show for anybody who has gone on and seen a number of these kind of morphing or transformation like things. I had also found out that this show was created by Michael McDuffie, which of course wrote the Justice League Tower of Babel story, and that eventually got adapted to be Justice League Doom. And in the featurette, they go on to do a homage to the man that created that story, and that is of course because he recently just kind of passed away when that story was to be released. So we have me be really intrigued by this character, coming back to it consistently, and even finding out that it had live action films. And for some reason now I found out they de-aged the character, and I guess her to try to bring back to once where it was. But I'm just okay, I don't know why they de-aged the character, but I guess that is what it is. Maybe they finished up the older version story. But so, how I was to go on and get reintroduced to this character, we have me just watch a bunch of Pop Cross Studios, which of course is this animation slash drawing channel. And I was like, man, yeah, I wasn't able to ever really draw perfectly. A lot of times now I would just kind of condense all these images together to continue to just make it more and more unique or goofy or weird or whatever, and just kind of see where that would get me. And so I really liked the art. It was really a really great fun channel. So it's hey, let's give Ben 10 a try. Why not? So going into these first 3 episodes, I would really just like all of them. They were really great. There wasn't a filler episode or anything like that. It does kind of feel like these episodes are to kind of be bottled within itself, because if I were to have ever gone on and kind of randomly watched an episode of Ben 10, I don't feel like I missed anything from prior episodes. So anything, we go into the first episode in order to kind of give us the origin story of this character, how Ben would try to be this kid who is to kind of stand up to people, but is to not be strong enough, or to not to be wise enough, or whichever. And so eventually he would get beaten up or bullied or whatever. And so then we have Ben, who turns around and is to via a meteor crash, kind of like Meteor Man or Chronicle, or uh, any number of kind of just weird, odd ways of which that people would go on to get powers at certain points. Like we would of course have like the Power Rangers movie that came out in like 2017 or something that somewhat seemed similar to Ben 10 in certain ways. But so, anyways, we have Ben 10 that can morph into 10 different aliens, and then at some point we'll have like the character like eventually go into like how like Pokemon does, where at certain points like they can only try and sell these 10 superhero-ish like characters for so long that eventually, like in the later seasons, we have to go on and like combine uh, two monsters or two alien species together, or we also have to go on and just completely give Ben a different set of aliens, and eventually just kind of keep going with that and keep trying to figure out how to uh, like keep this character really interesting. And so even at some point we find like the story gives us like the future Ben Tennyson. And so yeah, so which again, random times that I was to go on and see Ben 10. So we go on in this show, and for these 3 episodes we have of course the kind of the origin episode where we come to find that a meteor is to strike its way on to planet Earth. Ben is to uh, get this space watch and is to start playing with it. It's to try and figure it out. And while ending up figuring out, it seems that we go on to find that Max, who is a retired plumber, it seems, is to know a little bit more about what Ben is kind of going through than he wants to possibly even admit. And we don't find that out through these 3 episodes just quite yet, but we kind of are to give this kind of story building to Max, to have him like talk about his old job and how it seems to be very similar to what he's doing now, with both Gwen and Ben trying to go on and save these random towns from these random monsters or aliens or whatever the case may be. So we, in this first episode, are to have like Vilgax that comes in, and so Vilgax of course is to be like the main like big bad, but we don't see him in every episode. He kind of randomly comes in whenever he likes, or like whenever there seems to be like a story that is to build up to this character. Like we'll eventually get it, but this is kind of like how the early seasons of like Supernatural were, where you would have a number of episodes that were to be the just kind of random road trippy like episodes. And like to me it eventually would remind me of like Ghostbusters, like the cartoons, how they would eventually have these like random things that they would have to go on and find and do and trip to, and so on and so forth. Whether they had their equipment or not, they would still just try and defeat whatever this thing is. Or it also like reminded me of like Power Rangers a lot. For of course, you morphing into a much stronger character, and uh, and eventually find out the skills of those those alien-like things. So, with that said, I think I'm just going to go on and... so the first episode deals with the origin. The second episode is to really just be kind of like building up the rogues gallery. We have Dr. Animo, and he, of course, is to be this doctor that goes on to kind of use this certain kind of machine that is to make animals be under his control, and somewhat like an Ant-Man, or to be very similar to, again, like the Nick Nolte from the original Hulk film. And so we have Dr. Animo that is to desperately try to get some achievements that he was not given in the past. And we also have him trying to take using animals as his kind of lackeys, his minions, and we take that to a kind of absurd degree with even bringing back things like dinosaurs through this second episode, and I thought that was really interesting. We then go into the third episode, and this is to be kind of like one of those kind of themed episodes where someone had an idea of like, well, hey, how about we have Ben go into the water, but what if this water had a monster in it? And almost kind of like Jaws-like in some ways, to where it kind of had some feels of that. Maybe that's where they were kind of pulling from for this episode. And so, with that said, these 3 episodes were great. I really liked them because easily I was to just always like Ben 10 anyways. And for me, these 3 episodes, like, I didn't remember any of them. I didn't go on and like, well, I remember Gwen, I remember Max, and I remember Vilgax. Like, he was always like a big villainous character. But then everything else is like, okay, like, I don't remember these episodes, because how could I? So with that said, I'm going to just double 5 this bad boy up and just go into spoilers, because I've already been talking way too long about this show anyways. So, with that said, also, like, there were some aliens that I was like, oh yeah, that's Diamond Head, or yeah, that's Heat Blast, but a lot of times I would just be kind of familiar with the aliens, but I wouldn't go on and, like, maybe even remember their names, but I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the look of this one, or I remember the way that this one was to have this power. But anyways, let's go in, let's double 5, let's get into this, let's just spoil time, it's about the time we're going to spoil these episodes. So, we are having me state that I'm probably not going to get exactly specific like I would on every single bit of everything that I've ever watched and reviewed, because there's some stuff where I'm just like, I don't want to get into so many specifics, but we start off having 2 ships trying to go after one another, and we have the bioid that is to be Vilgax's drone, that is stating that there's only a certain percentage of the shield left on the ship. So Vilgax, of course, is mentioning that he will not be denied because he wants to go after this Omnitrix, which, of course, is to be the Space Watch. And so we have had Vilgax that has been hunting this down for who knows how long and is desperate to try to get to this thing. And it seems that, again, this might slip away from him yet again. So we go on to have Ben 10, who is now in school, and we have a teacher that is to talk about whose name is just Teacher, that she's to be doing summer school, and we come to find that Ben is so desperately wanting to get out of class because it's the last day of school before, of course, summer. And so we go on to have Ben, who is to take this paper airplane and chuck it. And so when Ben is to try to leave class, we of course have this teacher who is to try and discipline Ben for having this paper airplane. So, and kind of just chucking it into class. Because, like, this kid is like, I can't wait to just get out of here. So, when Ben 10 is to leave his classroom, we find both Cash and JT, who are going on and bullying a kid named Jamie for lunch money. Even though it's kind of funny because this, of course, is to be the last day of school. But yeah, still go after this kid for his lunch money. So we have Ben that is to try to defend Jamie, and it's like, well, hey, like, stop all this, you hooligans. You know what I'm saying? So we have both Cash and JT, that I'm assuming the number game comes into work here, as we realize that both Jamie and Ben are to get wedgies and be hung onto this tree. Just kind of showing that this character is to want to stick up for people, but at some point it backfires. So we have Max that is to try and go on and pick up Ben from school, noticing that, of course, he has a wedgie and onto a tree. So when Ben makes his way into the RV, he comes to find that Gwen is to also be in this RV, and he's like, oh, like the Cootie Queen is to come in and have to be with me during this whole like road trip. And Gwen's like, well, hey, I didn't want to go on and I didn't want to do this either. Like, I had a whole schedule planned. I had a whole like vacation schedule plan of every single day, had activities, so many activities to just kind of just full book my summer. But no, we all of a sudden find out that Gwen's mother had been convinced by Max to go on this camping road trip. And so we have Max, who is starting to listen to the conversation between both Ben and Gwen, and both of them are to seemingly be at odds with one another. And Max is like, man, this is going to be a long summer. So we have Max that is to unusually have some odd-like taste buds. But when you probably think of it, if this guy is to have the possible secret that I think he has, more than likely he's to have me make a lot of sense of why he is to have chosen the oddest of foods. But so we have Max that is to choose the marinated mealworms for a food for them to have. And so we have Max that is, obviously the kids are really interested. And so he's like, well, hey, like, you can change your taste buds and, like, you can really, like, live and just adventure and find out whether or not this tastes as well as you would like it to. And so we have both Gwen and we have Ben who are looking at one another. And so we have Ben that says, like, well, hey, I have a bag of chips, I have a candy bar, and we have Gwen that states that she has rice cakes and hard candy. And so both of them are like, well, like, do you think that we could probably make like all that stuff last throughout the whole summer? Considering within these 3 episodes how much they have to go on and buy a huge amount of cereal for one episode, I think they can just go on and just eat cereal a lot, and that'll be their meal for every day. So we go back to Vilgax, And so he's attacking this ship that has the Omnitrix. So, Space Watch. So, the thing that we see in the image that, of course, Ben is wielding. So, we have Max that is to bring both Gwen and Ben, who are outside, some marshmallows because he's like, hey, I want to put up a campfire and I want to do scary stories. Like, won't this be fun? And so we have Ben and we have Gwen who are still arguing, and so Max is like, oh my god. So Ben is to all of a sudden see a meteor kind of fall from the sky. So Ben is like, hey, like, let's go on and follow what this thing is. I'm sorry, whenever you were to ever go on and have a meteor crash, never good things. But at some points also you would eventually get superpowers. But there's also another side of that story where maybe it like turns out awful for you and you die a horrible, horrible death. But so anyways, we have Ben that makes his way to this meteor crash, and he comes to find that there is to just be this watch that is to be laying on the ground. And so Ben is to immediately state, it's like, well, like, what do they need a watch for in space? Because that's what this looks like. It looks like a watch. So we all of a sudden have Ben, who the Omnitrix is to kind of like fly to him and grab onto his wrist and latch itself onto it. And so we have this, to me, be fairly similar to like DC's Green Lantern, where at some point we would come to find that a ring bearer would be chosen, and they would like try to go on and find whoever would be the wielder, which would be Hal Jordan or Kyle Rayner or whoever is to be that day to be chosen. So we all of a sudden have Ben, who is to decide after he puts this thing on, he's kind of adjusting it, he's looking at it, and we then have him go on and see what this watch does by hitting these buttons, and all of a sudden he becomes Heat Blast, which of course is a kind of Ghost Rider-esque like character, which I thought was really cool right out of the gate. Like, the first early monsters of this is to kind of remind me of like supernatural stories, and so I was kind of won over by these episodes easily because like, okay, cool, like we're doing these characters first, and we're kind of showcasing the. I was like, okay, I like these characters anyways, but moving on. So Max is to be kind of curious where Ben wandered off because he's been gone for a long time. And we have Gwen that is to, of course, be hoping that Ben is to be like bear meat or be eaten by a bear. So we have Ben, who, of course, is running around and he's yelling and screaming, I'm on fire, I'm on fire. You're almost Shazam, buddy. Like, look how tall you are now. Like, they never go on and say anything about that. But so Ben is to realize that he's like, wait a minute, like, I'm on fire, but this doesn't hurt me, and so, like, I'm hot. And goofy, silly jokes, of course, are to occur. We have to have all this kind of, like, for whatever alien it is, they have to go on and, like, have this certain kind of humor that comes with it. Whenever we, of course, have Ben, who at some points gets sick, like all of the aliens that he is to be in as he is sick is to kind of like have like their own specific way of dealing with Ben being sick. And so it's kind of really interesting with where this show goes at certain points. So we have Ben, while just kind of testing out his fire-like skill, and he just continues to just blast away, because wanting to be cool, is to all of a sudden have him realize that the forest is now on fire. And so he's like, oh crap, like I wasn't thinking, I was just kind of just blasting away. So Max and Gwen are to realize that they should probably soon call for a forest ranger, because of course this is to be a forest fire, and Smokey would go on and tell you that only you can prevent forest fires. So but have them realize though that they need to rush out to see where Ben had gone. So the two of them would go and kind of grab a fire extinguisher and run off to figure out where Ben is. So we have Ben and Max meet Ben, and they meet Ben as Heat Blast. I want to try to go on and definitely try to be like, when Ben is just Ben, I want to call him Ben, or when Ben is to be a character, I would rather state the character's name rather than just Ben. Because a lot of times I'm like, wait a minute, isn't he supposed to be this monster at this point of the show? So I'll go on and state the monster name instead of the actual Ben character. So we have Gwen that goes on to douse Heat Blast, and she goes on to keep doing that. So we have Heat Blast that is to try to convince Gwen that he's Ben, by, of course, like stating how much that he hates Gwen. It's like, oh yeah, you are Ben. And so all of a sudden Max comes in and he starts dousing fire extinguisher and so on and so forth. And then Gwen is like, well, hey, this is Ben, oddly enough. Don't know why, but he's now Ben. And so we have Max that's just like, oh, like he doesn't freak out, he doesn't scream. Neither does Gwen, oddly enough. But for Max, like, this is just another day in his life, where of course Gwen should have been the one that actually screamed or whatever in terror and ran away, but then realized that it was to be Ben. But anyways, so we have the pressing matter of there being a fire here, and so Max is to come up with this plan that if they go on and start a brand new fire, that new fire will douse out the other fire and kind of just cancel one another out. So that is to be their master plan of kind of defeating this forest fire, besides bringing in Smokey the Bear. So we all of a sudden have the forest ranger who's coming in and noticing this fire, and so we have Vilgax that is upset. He was to, of course, lost the Omnitrix to Ben, because, of course, his drone is to explain to him that a probe had gone on to, via that other ship, to send that off to Earth, I'm assuming near the location of Max, for that specific reason. So we have Vilgax that tells Mechadroid to get the Omnitrix, because it's really just the same old kind of story where we have the villain that is to be sending some other thing out there to try and, like, it's kind of like Guyver in a way. So we go and have Heat Blast that explains how, of course, he was to come about the Space Watch, and like we already saw that story, so I'm not going to re-explain it. So we have Ben and Gwen mentioning that, or we have Heat Blast and Gwen that are really thinking that Heat Blast is just to be some monster, and Max is like, no, it's not a monster. it's an alien. And so, like, oh, I guess that just somehow lessens the blow. So we have Heat Blast that is realizing, like, well, hey, am I going to be this monster forever? Like, am I just going to be this character that is to uh, just never be able to, again, to have real interactions with anybody? Because fire. And we then find out that the monster is to go away, and Ben is to be Ben again. And so we have Max that is to go on and investigate the crash site of this meteor and is to look at a certain metal fragment, and he's like, oh no, like, I don't like the way that this looks. And in my brain, I'm like, this is just kind of like the Men in Black movie where you all of a sudden have like Tommy Lee Jones is like, I'm hoping it's not green, I'm hoping it's not green, and then it ends up being green, and he's like, oh crap. So he's like, Dad, we have a bug. So we then bring in Mecha Droid. So Mecha Droid just lands, and he's to be, to me, like a robot that looks similar to the robots in the early prequels of Star Wars. Those like drones with like those big pow 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 kind of things that they would like kind of roll in and they would unwind and just kind of pow pow pow, and like at certain points they would have shielding. Anyways, so we have Ben, who is to go on and play with this watch, regardless of Max going on and telling them the opposite or otherwise or indifferent or whatever. And so Ben wants to go on and experiment with this watch more to see what all this has to offer. And Gwen is trying to tell Ben not to do so, or even stating that she'll go on and like tattletale on him or tell Max about what he did, and him kind of wandering off and exploring. We'll find out that Ben is to far too often use the watch at the wrong times, and then by the time that he is supposed to need the watch, he can't use it, or we have a lot of times where Ben just uses the watch improperly, and so it's like, man, like if Ben could have just kind of saved up that watch, like battery or time or whatever, like we could have him be more often this alien when it comes down to these fighting scenarios, or maybe the watch would work better if Ben wouldn't just kind of frivolously use it for stuff that just. But I get it. It's just trying to get the stories to just be more interesting. Anyways, we have Ben that is to, like, I'm trying to figure out what would be the perfect word for Ben morphing instead of just saying the word morph, because I feel like that's a Power Ranger word. Like transference. He is to transform into Wild Mutt. So we have Gwen, who is looking at Wild Mutt, is like, well, this thing doesn't even have an eye or eyes or anything. So Gwen is to be tempted to just take this stick with this marshmallow on it and kind of smack into Wild Mutt. And Wild Mutt seems to have like the Daredevil approach to him, where if you know what Daredevil has, he's to go on and have all these other senses that are to be heightened. So like we can have like someone who makes a sound that kind of go off as this kind of radar-like sense. So technically Wild Mutt can see, but in a different way that normal people would go on and be able to see things. So yeah, so Wild Mutt goes on and realizes that Gwen is going to do this to him. So we then have Wild Mutt that counters, and she's like, okay, I guess it's a little this alien is to be a little bit better than I thought it was. But so we go and have Ben that runs off, or that runs out of time with Wild Mutt, as he crashes a mechadroid, and is to immediately find out that there's another mechadroid right there, because we have Ben who's to see this threat, and he's like, oh man, I'll just go on and take this out. Crashes it right into this rock, this kind of mountain, and then is to realize that there's another one there. So we have Ben who is now Ben again, and he's now in front of this mechadroid. So he's like, well, like, I guess I had a good run at the with this watch, the space watch. So Gwen comes in with a shovel, smash, and takes down the mechadroid. It's like, man, like, these things are really flimsy. So Max is to start to figure out the watch, is to understand it more. So we all of a sudden have them all in the RV together, and we have over the radio that it seems the radio is to call out and state that they are oddly enough having to battle robots. I know that doesn't seem like a rational thing, but they even state that also, because this is like the first occurrence of this. So we have the three of them that are like, okay, let's find out where this is, and let's try and help these people. So we have Ben that is to turn himself into Diamond Head. So we come to find that, like, Diamond Head is to be very, like, Captain America, like, every time he's to be Diamond Head, he seems to have this kind of, like, morality kind of thing about him, and we'll even at some points work that into the story in one of these Ben 10 episodes, where it's like, well, hey, like, why is it that when you're, like, Diamond Head, you have this, like, certain personality? He's like, I don't know why, but I just do. So Ben's gonna go on and fight the mechadroid, while both Max and Gwen are to be left to save the people. It's kind of like in the Justice League Unlimited episode, where we have the Justice League that goes on to take out the threat, while characters like Booster Gold or Elongated Man are to be left to do, like, crowd control, where they're just telling everybody where to go. It's like, hey, go this direction, or kind of looking at the map, and just, like, that's what Max and Gwen kind of end up being, or kind of guiding Ben where he should be focusing on the most. And so I think at some point Gwen does come in to have like a magic or some kind of thing that she gets, and I don't remember what exactly it is, but I know she gets something eventually beyond, like, at certain points there's certain episodes where, like, what if Gwen would have gotten the Omnitrix, or what if XYZ character, like, how could that have all played out? So we go and have Diamond Head that is to try and take out the mechadroid, and the mechadroid tosses Diamond Head, and he falls down into this RV, and we have Diamond Head that goes on to slice through the RV, and he's like, oh, like, I guess this thing is to have these this kind of built-in blade-like system. So we have Mechadroid that crashes on top of Diamond Head, because he does this kind of weird, goofy thing with his legs, and then kind of smashes down. I guess, like, somewhat kind of like a plane that is to kind of crash its way on top of something. So we have Max and Gwen who are trying to rescue the forest ranger. And so we have Diamond Head that slices a tree in half through the spike of his back while trying to protect Gwen from uh this tree. And so we of course have Diamond Head that tells Gwen, it's like, well, hey, we're even now because you saved me, I saved you. So we have Diamond Head that is to kind of hold with his hands to figure out that he can reflect the blast of his enemy and go on and kind of reproject it back out at it. And so I was like, okay, that's like a really cool, interesting power. So we have Valgax's ship that is just seemingly need to be under repair, and we of course have Velgax claiming that Ben will be on his trophy wall right next to his lifetime supply of pudding or some other garbagey crap that he probably has on this trophy wall. I'm sorry, like, a villain that has a trophy wall is a joke to me, because when really thinking about it, for how often a villain loses, how much of that trophy wall is going to really have a lot of stuff on it? Anyways, so we have Max and Gwen that are kind of repacking up because they're realizing, like, okay, like, this time here is over. And so we have Ben that is to become the Accelerate, but it's XLR8. It's a weird, goofy, short thing. But so we have, of course, Accelerate that is to tell both Max and Gwen that they need to check this out. As we have Accelerate that goes on and does these kind of like flash moves to collect all their stuff. And so he's like, hey, look at this. Like, it's a speed alien. It's like, great. So we go on to find that Ben is like, well, you know what? If I can go on and use this alien and kind of even up a score with an old bully, like, I'm going to go on and take out both Cash and JT and tree wedgie them like they had gone on to do to me, and he could just quickly get there and get back. And so I think that's what ends like the first, like, the pilot episode. So we go into the following episode and I'm like, oh my god, 43 minutes already? Oh my god. We're not even into the second episode. This sucks. Anyways, it is what it is. So we have Heat Blast that is to save a kid and a mother, random kid from a mother, kid and a mother. It doesn't have a part of the rest of the story. But anyways, we have Heat Blast that is to save them from a burning building. A fire monster doesn't make a lot of sense, but they make it work. So we okay. So while we have Heat Blast that goes on. Heat Wave would have made a lot more sense. But so we have Heat Blast that goes on to save this family, and then is to immediately tell everybody, like, hey guys, you don't all have to thank me. And like, yeah, I just saved those people, because he goes on and like creates this door by making this hole. And we have a lot of people that are like, dude, we don't give a crap. We don't care about you. So we don't even know who you are, because it's several different random aliens. Like, how is anybody going to go on and really know really about this alien thing? If anything, they're probably going to want to go on and destroy it and attack it and kill it, but they don't for some odd reason. So again, any rational thing that I've ever seen through a sci-fi film would be like try to kill this thing or contain it and then ask questions later, but we don't do that now, do we? So we come to find that Ben is to see this kid who had obtained gold super slammer cards, which is to be uh, like a very odd choice of a thing to try to sell. But for a lot of shows, I guess that you would have to go to this like kind of the random the oddest idea that would never actually become a thing to sell on a show for some reason, so that way no one could go and be like, hey, that's my idea or that's my thing, and lawsuits could happen for an odd object like that, I guess. So we have Ben that is to ask the kid, it's like, well, hey, where'd you get that gold Super Slammer card from? He's like, oh, I got it from a cereal box. And so we have Gwen that rushes to see Ben in his estate, that the whole burning building thing was just a distraction for what was really going on, which was to be this robbery with all these ski mask looking men. So we now have the RV and this car, and it's a chase. So we have Heat Blast that is to kind of be sitting in this RV and really be burning up the RV as they're kind of fire extinguishing Heat Blast consistently. And we had even at one point Max, who stated, it's like, man, I should have gone on and gone with another kind of seat here because that might have worked out a lot more. So we have Heat Blast that is to do an attack that is to take out this this car, and so by the time that Heat Blast gets out of the car to try to some way or another kind of keep these men from leaving this area, kind of like holding them up in some way, we all of a sudden have Ben who is to lose juice out of a run at a time, and so then he comes back into being Ben 10, and so both the guys are like, well, wait a minute, like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we needing to go on and like be held up by a kid? But then all of a sudden we find that there is to be the police that come, they arrest these robbers, and so it's like, oh, okay, all right. So next up, we have a landlord that is knocking on Dr. Animo's residence, his place, knowing that he, of course, is there because he's always there because he's a scientist. So we have a landlord that claims, or that is to realize that this place smells like a zoo. And we have Dr. Animo that is 6 months behind on his rent. And we have Animo that is to have come up with this unusual device that is to be the transmodificator, and he was to immediately go on and change this frog to be much larger and in Animo's control, and immediately we have this frog that is to consume the landlord, and we of course have Animo that is to use the frog in your throat joke, but then it's realized, well, I guess it's the other way around. So we have Animo that needs some components, and so like this character, if like the first episode, like the monster comes off to be like very like Thanos-ish, and he kind of just sends whoever out there. In this episode, we kind of have like a Dr. Octopus thing kind of going on here, which I kind of felt. So we have Animo that needs components, and he ends up seeing a commercial for a Mega Mart, and so he's like, all right, like this would be the perfect place because it's a general store. And so, weirdly enough, we have Max, Ben, and Gwen that are make their way into the same convenience store because it's convenient for the story. So we come to find that Ben is trying to get to that cereal to get to those specific sumo cards. And Max is looking for squid, and he's kind of looking for like a certain can, a certain this, and certain that. And we have Ben and Gwen that are consistently asking Max, is like, why can't we just get a burger? Like, why can't we just have normal food like any common Joe Schmo person? And so we really just have Max that is to consistently just try and dice up these characters' taste buds, but it just won't ever happen. So Ben comes to find a way to try and get through all of these cereal boxes by becoming Gray Matter, which is to kind of be a shrink in size like alien. And so he starts going through all of them. Gwen makes her way through this aisle and is to witness the aftermath of Ben destroying this whole aisle. So we have a character named Regis, like he has this kind of a name tag possibly on his apron. So we have some store clerk that goes on and states to Gwen that somebody's going to need to pay for all of this like destruction, and we then turn around and have Ben that feels he deserves a reward for saving people's lives. And so it's like, oh, what valuable lesson is going to Ben learn in this episode? That maybe he should not go on and treat this as like, well, like I should go on and get some payout or some kind of something after every time I go on and do a good deed. It's like the good deed should be its own reward. So to just kind of feel good, or maybe feel that at all the end at the end of this character's story will possibly have him feel good that he did something good, and that at the end of the story, like when he dies, maybe he'll get rewarded for like, oh yeah, like you did all of these things in your life, good for you. So we have been realizing that there's a complete set of sumo cards. And so he's like, oh my god, like the one card that I want, oh my god, it's right there, it's in that display. So we have Enemo that breaks into the mart with his frog, and Ben is to have already wasted his watch energy being, of course, gray matter, so like he can't go on and just quickly become another another alien. So we have quickly Animo that starts to infect the pets that are to, of course, be in this general convenient store. And so we have the hamster and we have the parrot from the pet section of the store that are to become these monsters. So we, because they're being modified, they're trans-modificated or whatever. So while Max and Gwen are starting to kind of like run around the aisles because they're not Ben 10, so Ben hits the hamster with this football, and it's like, well, hey, I can still beat these monsters without having to be one of the combination of other aliens. So Ben is to get on this kind of motorized scooter and is to try to figure out a way to take down this hamster, which he eventually is to trap this hamster in between two aisles collapsing on one another. So we have, of course, Dr. NMO that will make Washington, D.C. become Washington, B.C. because this guy is to state that uh, every bit of what he's trying to accomplish is to make everything be a past then like thing. So we also turn around here and have Regis, who is willing to give Ben any reward that he is to, of course, possibly wish for. And Ben wants the Super Slammer card, and we have Max who's to grab Ben and kind of walk him out of the store because, like, no. Like, we're just, no, like, you're not going to take this reward. So we have this follow up with the RV that is to be trying to get to follow the parrot here. And so Max is talking about his plumber days and how this is to feel fairly similar. And Gwen is like, I don't know how exactly you being a plumber is to be anywhere close to what we're doing now. And so Max is just like, oh, but those days. But now he, of course, is to be retired. So we have Gwen that is to tell the guys about Animo, and that he, of course, was a researcher in veterinarian science, and at some point he was to try to get this Varodis award, Veridis award, and we have Ben 10. It's like, well, like, considering this guy is to be really interested in animals, I think there's only one place and one place alone that this guy is going to head into next, which of course is to be the National History Museum. So we come to find Animo's plan as he is to talk to Ben, Max, and Gwen. And his plan is to have it be that now, since he has all these components, these parts, he is going to reanimate cells, meaning that he, of course, is to go on and resurrect dinosaurs and have them now work for him. So we have a mammoth that is to now come to life, and so Ben is to transform into forearms, and is to say, it's like, well, hey, I will fight the mammoth while the both of you go after the doctor. So Gwen is to fight off the parrot with some stick, because it's like, well, hey, like, Ben isn't the only one with skills in this family, and you'll find out that Max will have some also. So Max and Gwen see the T-Rex get revived, and like, oh no, like, this is Jurassic Park all over again. Anyways, so we have forearms that tosses mammoth by the trunk, and it's to smash it and take it out. So after that, it seems, after that dizzy spell, we have forearms that vomits. So I'm sure that needed to be said, right? So we have Animo leaving to claim that his reward is to be the next on his hit list to go after that award that had been taken from him from his past. So we have the parrot that goes on, grabs Gwen, and when Ben tries to stop the parrot, he falls and runs out of time with, again, the forearms character. So we have Gwen that is to have her emergency phone for emergencies. She feels like this could be the one time that feels like that, as she is to make her way to the Washington Monument and kind of just be stuck there. So Max and Ben uncover a photo of Dr. Verity, who received the last reward. And so it's like, okay, like, this is where this guy should be heading to next. So Gwen is to almost fall, or Gwen is to fall, or almost, Gwen is to almost fall off the Washington Monument. She drops her phone breaks. And so Ben then is to realize that Gwen is to at some point fall, and so he turns into Stinky Fly to try and capture Gwen before she falls, saving her life, and then is to turn around and get to NMO. And Ben sees the sumo card, the gold one, and he's like, oh my god, I just want to get to this card, but look at NMO, I need to focus on him, because of course NMO is to have found the Dr. Verity, and is to try and have him be eaten by this T-Rex. So we go on to have Ben, that is to, as Stinkfly, Stinkfly, grab the doctor, save him, and then go back after and grab Animo's helmet, because of course once you grab Animo's helmet, it's kind of like Ant-Man, that he used to lose his ability to talk to ants. So we all of a sudden find that the T-Rex is to lose its reviving like ability, and then it is to just become all skull and bones and drops, as well as Animo does. And we have all the other animals that go right back to normal, and we even have it to where the parrot flies onto Gwen's shoulder. She's like, oh, you want to be nice to me now? So Ben realizes it was a mistake to be as greedy as he was to be about wanting some reward after a good deed, because that's just going to turn him into NMO at some point. So he's like, like I see like the parallels of my mistake. So we have Ben, who is back into the RV and is to realize that he was to have a trophy from beating NMO, and Gwen is to say, but you also saved me, and Ben's like, yeah, I did that too. So we then go on to the last episode, and I'm trying to rush through this because I realize that this is to, of course, be the last episode, and I've already gone over the hour. I think every one of these episodes were like 22 minutes, but still. Anyways, for how I would normally just like, well, hey, let's hopefully do a quick one, and then realize it takes a million years because there's so many things going on in the show. But let's go into this. So Ben goes swimming and does a cannonball into this just lake. And we immediately have Gwen, who's like, I'm not swimming in that water, you know how polluted it is. Yeah. So we have Ben that gets grabbed and is to be seemingly pulled into the water. And Gwen starts to get scared. She's like, oh no, like, what has happened to Ben? And Ben is to all of a sudden come out of the water as forearms and try and scare Gwen as this kind of like Swamp Thing Ash-like character. And we of course have Gwen as like, good joke. So then we all of a sudden have forearms that is to be like sucked into this water, and it's to be attacked by the Kraken, or Kraken as it seems to have been called without the. And we then have Ben rushing to the RV, telling both Max and Gwen his tale of fighting this monstrous being. And Max is like, dude, like, we have an early day tomorrow, go to bed. Like, what are you doing? Don't tell me this tale unless you've gone on and defeated another monster, then I'm intrigued. But so, maybe we'll go on to have Max, who is to have Kraken meat or whatever. So we have both Max and Ben want to go fishing, and we have Gwen who is to see that they're handling worms, and she's like, I'm out, I'm gonna go on and just tan. And so both Gwen and Max are to go onto this boat that seems to be owned by Mr. Shaw, who really just comes off as the Jaws guy, where he's like, all right, like 3 men come into the water, 3 men hopefully will come out of the water, maybe one less than he was before, but still. So we have Mr. Shaw, who is captain. So Ben's wanting to get the advantage on this creature by kind of just staring just blatantly into the water. And we have both Max and Shaw that just are talking, and Max is to already get a vibe of Shaw to like, dude, this guy is a screw loose, this guy's weird, he's very unfriendly. So we have a time where Max is like, you know what, like, how about we just relax and kind of take it easy and have this be a fishing trip instead of a monster hunt. So we have Ben starting to talk about the monster, and so Mr. Shaw's like, you mean the Kraken? Of course, he has a pirate-like way of talking. And so he's like, yeah, I've been tracking that thing for years. As they go on and they like compare this guy to Ahab or Moby Manhood. D-I-C-K. Moby D-I-C-K. Like those kind of hunter characters that were in old stories. So we would go on and have the explanation of this character being used in a Star Trek movie at some point also. Where it's like, the hunter needs to get his whale. So we have Max that is telling Ben, it's like, I wouldn't fully trust this guy because it seems like he's a screw loose. So we come to find a ship that has the word F-O-F. And immediately what came to mind in my brain was F off Effers. That just what kind of popped in my brain. But instead we would find out that... So we would find out that this is actually Jonah Melville of Friends of Fish. And so this guy is to come off as this kind of like wildlife preserver or something like that. And so he tells Shaw that he can't go any further past this part of sea because, of course, there is to be this study being done. I'm like, why not just have, like, isn't there, like, a certain people that are to kind of keep people out, like the Coast Guard or something like that? Like, shouldn't they have that job instead of them themselves? But anyways, so we all of a sudden come to find out that the Kraken is to go on to make its way into this water, and is to kind of get underneath Ben's boat, and it's to make his way to, of course, where Ben is, or Ben is, Gwen is, which of course is its pier, and we have Ben that has to transform into an alien to help out those people on the pier. Come to find out, we have Ben who wants to like turn into Ripjaw, and so instead he ends up becoming Accelerate, which is kind of this speed alien, and so he's like, man, this watch sucks. And that'll happen just quite often, where we'll find out, like, so many times, like, the wrong alien will be forcibly having Ben need to come up with a strategy to be able to beat this monster. And oddly enough, he'll come up with something. So we go on to have Accelerate, who runs on water, grabbing Gwen and hitting her with mud on his kind of exit, and she's like, like you did that on purpose. So we have FOF, that is to have their boat be attacked by the Kraken. We go on to have the Kraken that tries to grab for this crate that says Canary, and or Canary, either way, but Canary is, I think, how it's actually pronounced. So we have XL that is to use its speed to kind of shake this monster, to kind of let go of the grip on it. And we have Jonah that's like, well, hey, like, thanks for the assist. And so XL's like, yeah, whatever. So we have it feel like the monster is to be gone, but no, like, the Kraken comes back and tries to grab for the crate again. So we have Accelerate that tries to run back to the boat on water, and we end up finding out that again Ben is to run out of time. So we have Ben who becomes Ben, and he's just right by the boat. And we have Max who's a tall shot. It's like, well, hey, like, man overboard. And we have Ben who's kind of in the water. Shaw is more distracted with the Kraken than to really give a crap about Ben. So we have Ben that says that Shaw and him were right, and Ben can do something about it with his Monster Buster. So kind of Ghostbusters like. So we come to find out that Shaw's estate, that the lake is going to be closed, but he has a way around it because, like, this thing needs to be taken care of. So Shaw and Ben go out there together to get to the Kraken, and Shaw realizes that Ben is in somewhere in the boat, and he's like, well, hey, I don't take on anybody, like Shaw's like, and Ben is like, well, like, you're gonna take on this kid. So we have Shaw that on his boat is to find a bunch of masked men, try and grab on to Shaw, and come to find out that that is the the FOF guys. And I was like, well, of course, because there was 3 guys before, and we have a very limited cast here, so of course these guys would be the villains of the story. And so it's revealed that Jonah is to be one of them, and so Shaw is to tell them nothing as far as information goes. So Jonah goes on to explode Shaw's boat, and we have Ben that is to morph into Stinky Fly. So Stinky Fly takes out 2 of the men and is to kind of goop them up, but that seems to not be a permanent just taking down of those characters, but still. So we then have Jonas's men that is to also chuck Shaw into the water, and so now Stinkfly has to go on and try to grab Shaw and drag him back to the shore. Well, of course, Jonah wants to take out the bug. So we have Stinky Fly that uses his wait. Maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So yeah, we have Stinky Fly that goes on to take down 2 of the men, and then he falls in the water, and then we realize that he can't fly, and Jonah wants to take out the bug. We then have Stinky Fly that uses his kind of weird, like, tongue saliva-like thing as this kind of rope to kind of pull him onto this tree where he could be saved. And we then have Jonah that dumps Shaw, and that's when Stinky Fly is to then grab Shaw to save him from drowning. And we then have again Stinky Fly that is trying to fly as quickly as possible to get back to shore, and both Ben and Stinky Fly are to fall onto the RV's awning, which is to be this kind of like this drape over the RV. So we have Gwen that reveals that the FOF isn't really real. It's some fake thing. And Jonah wants just wants the Kraken's eggs so that way he can sell this off to the highest bidder. It's always the soldier of fortune kind of thing. That's always the kind of traditional stories for a lot of these characters. And I guess that was, of course, what was in that crate was those eggs. So Shaw has a spare boat if it seems that these people are interested in going after this thing again. So we come to find that Max, Ben, and Gwen are to take this boat and have Shaw be left ashore, and it seems that we come to find out that Shaw has an extra boat, because why wouldn't he? So, Guy doesn't trust anybody. So, Jonah is to have captured these eggs, and we have Ben that alien alters into Ripjaws, which of course is to be this this more fish-like alien. So Max gives Gwen some hand signals as they're trying to take down one of these goons, and we go on to find that they are to kind of like grab this one apparatus as we come to find the Kraken kind of crashing its way through this boat and taking out one of the goons. And like Gwen is to state to Max, like, well, this seems to be a very unusual way to take these guys out. And it's like, well, yeah, but like anyway, the job still got done. So Ripjaws tries to retrieve these eggs to fight Jonah in this armored scuba-like gear that you would kind of see in a number of different kind of like aquatic like movies like The Abyss or Leviathan. Like you would kind of see this kind of mech suit being used underwater. So we have the Kraken that is to scramble with the eggs. There was supposed to be an egg joke there, but I didn't pull it off that well. So Ripjaws, Jonah, and Kraken are all fighting for these eggs. They're all scrambling for them. And we have Ripjaws that uses this anchor as this kind of weird, kind of like tossing like thing. And I really would go on to feel that water physics doesn't work here during this attack. It feels like they couldn't go on and figure out how to do a actual like thing underwater as it should be underwater, so they just kind of did it as it would normally, and it just looks odd. I don't care how strong that Ripjaws is, still like the physics of water still have to come into factor here. So we go on to have the anchor hit Jonah. That has him, of course, forcibly lose his mech armor. So he gets out of the mech armor to try and go on and attack the Kraken with this like flimsy dagger. And that goes on to almost have the Kraken that just wants to eat Jonah, but Ripjaws comes into the rescue. So we have Ripjaws that is to go and plop Noah onto this on this piece of wood and be like, well, hey, you're gonna hang there for a while. So we have Ripjaw's that is to get fished out by Shawn. He's like, well, hey, one of the eggs had hatched. Oh, isn't this great? And we have Max that's like, well, I don't think you caught what you thought you caught. As then it's to be revealed that it's Ben, and Shaw's like, oh, what? And that, of course, is how they end the episode. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.